Good afternoon, everyone. Can you read the sundial in case the power goes out? Let's look at 150 years of exports because this affects all of us. Food more expensive. DoorDash raising prices, New York City, going to affect you if you thought you could stay in and order. Europe's largest agricultural plant in Italy is on fire. Container shipping rates surging. Definitely going to pass that cost to you. Emergency loans needed from banks from the Federal Reserve. We've seen this 2 times in history before the collapse. 2009, we're looking for the pattern. 2023 with commodities. As Cubans prepare for 5 times fuel price increases knocked loose in clouds where they shouldn't be in the Northern Hemisphere. And a new glimpse at the lava covering a city in Iceland. And starting you off here with History 101, sundials traveling through Europe. I started to see them more and more. Once you see it everywhere. Can you read the time? And remember, these don't work on daylight savings time. It works as the sun transits the sky, even with the equinoxes visible in the sundial approaching 1 o'clock. So if we lose our power supply, we still have access to time. Speaking of time, let's take a look at 150 years of exports. Who were the giants 150 years ago? Because this is always shifting. And it depends on the container rates and what we can get as cheap, available, safe, guaranteed, no piracy across the oceans shipping. Obviously the UK, Germany, US, Japan, and then China starting to come on deep over in our modern times. This is all predicated on foes not fighting with each other, but as we go back in history again, we start to see old grudges coming back, Iran, Pakistan. Now, how will this affect any of the transits out of the oil-rich areas of the planet? We already know what's happening on the Red Sea, which we'll talk about in a second. But if the oil stops, well, we're going to see a destruction of the beginning of the ages. This is another thing I kept coming across in Europe. When the age changes, the old world is destroyed on purpose as a marker that everything new begins as a new spring of 2,000 years in cycle time. So if we want to follow the zodiac around, we've just entered the age of Aquarius, December 2020, and oh, how much of our lives changed since that time. If you go back to the beginning of Pisces and the birth of Christ, of anything in the Greek and Roman Empire was destroyed as the age changed. A lot of cycles repeating. Now, you would look for signs in the skies as well. Changes of these ages also bring in new energetic frequencies from the sun and the Birkeland currents surrounding our solar system as we transit through space. That's what the astrology is about. The energetics as we move through space. Knocked loose in clouds visible during the super freeze last week. They shouldn't be there, but they are. So what's causing them is more the question, and how thick and above the normal are they? But really, what is causing this atmospheric change, or these extreme temperatures that are now visible to our naked eyes? Here's one out of Ontario that might make you scratch your head, and no, this is not a AI generated graphic. It's an actual photo of clouds preceding that massive weather front that sent all-time energy usage in Canada in several provinces. Gold has soared past $2,000 an ounce. Wars in Israel and the Ukraine. Rate cuts on the table are fueling gold's meteoric rise. Meanwhile, our national debt is skyrocketing higher above $34 trillion. There's a direct correlation to the national debt and the price of gold. Call the proud Americans, the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention the Adapt 2030 channel. You're going to get some great in-class service. Also, Patriot Gold Group has a no fee for life IRA where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver. No fee for life IRA on qualifying rollovers. Give them a call, 888-546-7020. And now on with the video. Now we need to start to look for the geologic upheaval or beginnings of rumbles that are visible, things above the normal. Volcanoes that haven't had activity or eruptions in some 1200 or 2000 years coming to life again in several places across the planet. And right on cue, you start to see food prices across the planet rising, doubling or more in the last couple of years. And you might ask yourself, why right at this time? Well, if we're in this cycle, that's a known cycle that would reduce food production, you're going to have to make a lot of choices as a government to keep continuity and power and finance and economy in the grasp and control of a few. Now, a lot of people thought, well, it's just cheaper to order in by using DoorDash or some of these services or going to eat fast food than going to the supermarket and buying, bulk foods and preparing at home. Well, you know what? That rug is being pulled out so quickly that fast food costs more than cooking at home. And now we see DoorDash in New York City. This is the change. This is a canary in the coal mine. They are going to raise their fees. Now there's a new minimum wage law. That's going to cost you an additional $4 on every single order that you get sent over to your place. And the commissions are going to be raised from 20 to 23%, which means it's actually going to cost you far more to have your food in if you're doing this a couple times a week. The gig workers, they're going to be paid $17.90 per hour versus what they were previously, where a lot of that was made up in tips, like regular restaurant workers. Remember back in the day, you got either $2, $5 an hour, but everything was on tips, depending if you're back in the 80s, 90s, or 2000s working, that didn't really have a minimum wage inside the food and bev industry. It was more predicated on tips, and people were making a killing. And remember when, I think it was Reagan came and started to tax everybody's tips. But food, wherever you look, let's look at the staples here. Rice prices rise 15-year highs. So now even the basic staples. These are the canaries in the coal mine. Cocoa prices soaring 70% in 2023. And now we have Ukraine increasing the cost of the alcohol 71%. After that war going on, I didn't even know they still had industry functional over there. The way you see it on the news, things been flattened to the ground, or maybe it's not. But the dumping of the grains across the EU causing all these farmer strikes. You'd think they'd have extra grains to produce more alcohol, but I don't know. There's an inverse in there happening somewhere. Seems like a lot of costs are just getting passed on to people. And you can see it's going to be never ending from this point forward, up and up and up. Well, I just had been in Italy doing a lot of research on the tides and disused ports and cycles of time encoded in oil paintings through the 1400s. Now Italy officially bans the sale of lab-grown meats. Now they're the first in Europe to do it, so once there's a first, there's always going to be a second. And as soon as they did that, can you believe it? Italy's largest and Europe's largest agricultural plant on fire. Now you can maybe say that these are related, maybe one, and that was the retribution for doing such a thing, but it is kind of quirky that as soon as they banned lab-grown meats, their largest processing facility for agriculture is up in flames. Well, we've seen this a lot across the planet. And it was all about pesticide-free crops, vertically integrated. We can't have that now, can we? Now, speaking of large fires, here we have an Amazon warehouse equivalent in Russia. That's wide view and close-in view. Looked very much like New Palestine, and this is a bunch of goods in an Amazon facility, quote-unquote, equivalent, up in flames. So we're starting to see a lot of these large warehouse fires occurring. And speaking of price increases, we're looking at Cuba now is going to increase the price of fuel 5 times. That's a 500% increase. So I would, beg the question 5 times. In your life, if something increases 5 times, how would it affect not only you, but the state, the neighborhood, society in general? Cuba had brought up this home production, to the world-class level where people went down there to study how to do mixed and integrated agriculture. And I wouldn't say sustainability, it was just out of necessity. but that necessity drove innovation to, top levels on the planet. So when people are trying to revert and bring systems back into this holistic, looping, everything used, nothing wasted system for producing vegetables, meats, etc., Cuba was at the apex of that. But without the fuels now, what happens there? So, it's going to be a watch and see, but the clue from this is you're going to need to still grow your own food. Seeds are available coming into spring. TrueLeafMarket.com is a great one. And how do they say? Time to get your preps on. Red Sea unrest, bad news for world's fragile food supply, right from Bloomberg. Shipping disruptions risk higher prices and food spoiling. Again, it's all about the food. There needs to be an excuse why the food getting more expensive and why it's not arriving on time and why it's substandard and why there's less choice. It'll never be because it's from a change of an age and we're expected different energetics from our sun and the solar system disrupting agriculture on the planet. They'll never say that. It's because the Red Sea. Don't worry about it. Don't ask any questions. Just follow the delivery charts here. Drewry's World Container Index, WCI. You can check out the latest rates if you want to. They've kind of plateaued for now, but 1,500 to 2,800, and then, you can get some better charting as it moved on a little bit further with shipping costs climbing and the different types of vessels and the different regions that we're passing through, whether it was the Suez Canal. Everything's up and up. And then the newest chart's just coming out this week, container shipping rates, showing you from Shanghai to Rotterdam, Shanghai to Los Angeles, Shanghai to New York, and then the total composite. I don't see anything going down there. I just see more expensive everything getting passed on to us, the consumers. Look for the chaos to ensue in 2024. Check out the interview I did with Bob Kudla just yesterday, giving a timeline on what we can expect for 2024 and 25 for stock reversals. And as always, we're going to look for patterns in this. It's the pattern recognition. So if we go back to economic collapse cycles, what did we find? Repo market where banks didn't trust banks, so they had to reach out to the Federal Reserve for emergency lending and emergency overnight loans to still stay functional. We've seen that twice, 2009 and right at the end of 2019 pre-COVID. Now, you can say whatever you want about COVID was an excuse to print unlimited money, which it was, but it was the second time that the repo market had failed, right around $1.2 trillion per night. So we're looking for a pattern. Let's see if we can find it. Oh, wait, 1.13 trillion per night emergency loans. This is why when you start to see these same numbers that trip off an event, it's happened twice already, and we're dangerously close to the 1.2 trillion. Now, there's more money in the system now, so maybe it could go to 1.3, 1.4 trillion, but once it hits that, it is a significant event will come in again to allow us to print unlimited money. Would that be a war? I am not sure. Use your imagination. But looking at not only the borrowing through the Fed for emergency funding, but we also looked at the commodities doing the exact same thing during the exact same times. And this one that collapsed 2008 and 9, very clean. It's the only super dip, for a better term. And if we look over to the right, what do we see in December of 2023? So you can start to see the wrap up and the overlay of time and history, and we are at it again. It's not about all these factors are just happening. It's because of the change of the age. The event is inbound. This is governments responding to the event. Talk about that in the next couple videos. We're looking at October 24 here coming up, so please join me as I explain my research through the churches, the temples, the waterways, the abandoned ports that I found through Europe here, cathedrals, the castles, the timestamps, the lithographs. Everything points to a cycle that is inbound, repeatable, forecastable, and it disrupts shipping across all the coastal regions. See you then. Bye for now.